Good morning, Tracy. Thank you for being here. Solomon, that is our captioner. Hello, Kate.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm always so impressed by live captioners. I am just, yeah. Whew. I'll try to speak slowly.
They've got
Thank you.
skills.
Thank you. I'm going to send the link too. It's actually through Stream Text, which is more stable than through the Zoom and doesn't have as much of a delay. So I'll send that to you.
Great.
It should be in the chat already, Tracy.
Okay. Yes, I sent it already. I just wanted to make sure everybody had it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Toya went straight from presenting the last session to transitioning here with us. That's cool.
Hi, Toya. Oh, hi, Megan. This is exciting.
Libby, you're with the library. Is that right?
Oh, hi.
I'm so used to there being multiple Megans, and there were multiple Megans last time, and I was like, oh, she's
Oh
not
my
gonna say
gosh.
hi. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you, Toya. It's been a while. We need to catch up.
No, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of you I connected with when I first transitioned into my role at ICADV, and I'm excited to be in a new phase and hear what everyone's been up to.
Neat. Welcome in, everyone. We have a few minutes for others to join us before we get started.
Oh, there's a dog.
Yeah, she started barking at the end of my presentation. I'm like, let me
No.
But yes, she came to work with me today. So
Nice. Oh my gosh, what a little fluffy pup. Good for collective care, I would argue, those dogs and cats are. And bunnies. Thinking of you, Megan.
Good morning, Colleen. Hello, Elizabeth. Hi, Jesse.
Hello.
As it gets closer to the start time, people tend to get quieter.
I'm tempted to chat with everyone, but then
Yeah.
that's not what I'm here for today.
All right, everybody, it's 10 o'clock. So good morning and thank you for coming. I'm Tara Green. I'm going to be your session host today just to help it flow a little bit. Our topic right now is collective care. We also have Marley Case with us. She is our tech host. So she's hosting this little Zoom room. So if you have any technical questions, please message Marley directly in the chat. We'll have the chat available throughout today. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to put it in there, and where it feels natural, we'll kind of fold it right into the conversation, and then we'll have time to look at those that we didn't get to at the end as well. We're going to record today's presentation, so it'll be available on the Btcc website. After the summit, that's where you'll find other things that have been shared, like slides and handouts and any other information from the speakers. So right now, we're going to welcome Stephanie Solomon as our presenter for this session. They are with the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I am so grateful to have her as a presenter. Many of you know her as having run this summit in the past. So Solomon, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Big fan of MC3. And yeah, excited about the topic today. And I think it really weaves in well with the years of care that BTCC has been bringing into Monroe County and beyond. So I'll launch right in and tell you a little bit about myself. So a lot of people call me Solomon. So I wanted to, you'll hear that in the session room today. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Youth Prevention Coordinator at the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Sometimes I'll call it ICADV or the Coalition for short, because it's a mouthful. And I wanted to show you pictures of some of my favorite parts of my world right now. So, well, there's a picture of me. That one doesn't count. But then I get to work with an incredible group of young people at ICADV who make up our youth council. And the goal really is to engage in statewide violence prevention by trying to change the world and bring young people into roles that include decision making and sharing their voices and lived experiences. I also want to share my two kittens who are rather new in my life. The gray one is Cynthia, and the black and white one is Gregory. And I feel cared for when I come out of my office. They can't come in here, they'd be like climbing all over the screen. When I come out of my office and they greet me. And so I would love very much to hear from you in the chat, your name, anything related to the work that you do that you want to share, and then also what makes you feel cared for. So something like, I feel cared for when, and I'll let that kind of start coming in as I move to a quick agenda. So just to give you a sense, I know some folks really like to know, how are we going to spend this time together? We'll start with some introductions and checking out who's in the room. We'll move to talking a little bit about the construct of self-care and what it means to us and what some of the benefits and limitations are. We'll go into collective care and talk about some definitions and possibilities. We'll then move into the social ecology. I really appreciate the social ecological model as a framework and want to share it with those of you that haven't used it before, and then also enjoy looking at it with a different lens with those of you that are familiar. And then where do we go from here? So what if in this world that we're in, what does collective care look like, and how can we take those strategies back into our organizations? And then hopefully we'll have time for questions, but please feel free to put questions into the chat as we go. And if I miss them, Tara will lift them up or save them for the end. So in your chat introductions, I just want to get a sense of who's here. So we have Megan from the Hub. Oh, yes. And when you work at Mother Hubbard's Cupboard, at least when I did, I was often offered a warm mug of coffee. I really loved that. And then Amy from Probations. Yeah. Oh, listen to with sincerity. Tara, Btcc and teacher. Yes, being greeted and acknowledged verbally, or yeah, I've been that person who's just been excited to like see you and connect. Marley, youth prevention specialist at YSB. Oh, and someone cooks for me. Yeah, that's a really amazing one. And we have Libby from CASA and Alyssa from, I think, chances that's Casey, I think. Cared for by her pet Chihuahua, Charles. Charles, Gregory, and Cynthia are good ones. And Toya, from the city, I feel cared for when someone sends me a nice note. Love it. Love hearing all these expressions of care. We have Lauren, I think that came straight to me, from Healthy Families. When my kids all hug me at the same time, I can imagine. Oh my gosh. And then Mike from Family Solutions. When people reach out and remember the things we've talked about the last time we met. Yes, that's a big one. Robin, hi Robin, from IYSA, when her kids spend time with her. Megan Benetti with IU, I feel cared for when I can spend quality time with my loved ones. Oh my gosh. Okay, great to get. I probably shouldn't keep reading through these because we'll run out of time, but it is really wonderful to hear from all of you. Oh, I'm seeing an unexpected gift on the porch. Movies and books. Okay, stop. All right. So yeah, I wanted to start with, you know, in our community-based, especially direct service work, often the answer to burnout is self-care. So you can go to superiors into all of these spaces and talk about the burnout that a lot of us have experienced and be told to really work on your self-care techniques. So I want to interrogate that idea today with all of you. And look at some of the benefits and drawbacks of our culture's construct of self-care. So I was hoping that folks might raise your hand or share an emoji if you've attended a workshop or session about addressing burnout with self-care. Yeah, so I'm seeing a couple. Yeah, they're coming. Yeah, I know this is a big way, especially with youth workers, with teachers, with nurses. There's a lot of talk of you need to rejuvenate, you need to really focus on self-care as a solution to that burnout that happens. Okay, so what I want to do next is hear from you a little bit, and you're welcome to either write in the chat or unmute and speak aloud. But what comes up for you when you think of self-care? So it could be images, it could be statements, it could be ideas. Megan, would you like to go?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing that comes up for me is like guilt, because then it's like I'm bad at it. And so then it is like always my fault that like I don't feel well because I don't do it.
Well, yeah, really getting in there, Megan. Yeah, guilt.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I see Libby taking a break, Toya not answering emails or phone, Amy vacations, Robin time to do the things that I enjoy, making time for the things I'm passionate about. Yeah. Yeah, I'm supposed to write. Writing can definitely be considered self-care. I think that it would be if you consider it to be self-care. Anything else? Giving myself permission to stop thinking, fully hand off to others, exercise, music, social, and alone time. Yes, yes, all of those. All right, so one great thing that I have learned both from Btcc and from ICADB is some new ways of creative ways of collecting data. So I did a little bit of creative data collection. which was Googling self-care and seeing what came up. So these are the first images that came up in terms of self-care. And I was hoping to hear back what people's impressions are, like what resonates with you, what maybe, you know, what considerations come up when you think of how we are thinking of and seeing self-care in our culture.
Well, I studied in Japan and had to learn how to do the tea ceremony, and I will never drink green tea a day in my life ever again, even if my life depended on it. So that's a no for me for self-care, taking care of yourself right there.
All right. Yeah. Self-care, identifying what you like, what works for you and what doesn't.
So that's definitely a no for me, and tuna as well.
Thank you.
In my interpretation, I'm seeing images that seem female identifying in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. So we definitely have a gender thing. Yeah. Mostly like it's a feminine, we see some pink in the flowers, beauty industry adjacent, about externals. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then Amy said it in another way, the images are from outside in rather than from inside out. And then yes, white women. So we're seeing like around a very specific representation of who gets self-care, and white women are who show up first. So I think that's a central one too.
Hi, Stephanie. Sorry, can I add one?
Hi.
I was just gonna say it's all very like materialistic, and that you have to spend money to take care of yourself. Like even the person like doing yoga on the beach, like maybe that's a retreat or that's a class or something, but everything is kind of a capitalistic and very materialistic, which we know it definitely doesn't have to be, but that's the message I get, especially from these images.
Yeah, so we're seeing a few social constructions around race, gender, capitalism. Yeah, and then I'm seeing, I want to lift up what Katie Hopkins said about taking care of yourself, placing all of the responsibility for care on the individual. So I think that's a really central one. Thank you for that. And then Lauren Woodworth, self-care, people think self-care means you have to spend a lot of money, but in many cases, the quality can matter a lot more than the quantity, and that self-care for men is often seen as hobbies, but women's self-care is judged differently as indulgences. Oh, yeah, yeah. I appreciate that one. And I think, yeah, it's depending on whose lens you're looking through, these things could be seen as positive or negative, and be judged in different ways. So with limited time, we'll move on to so some benefits of our conceptions of self-care. There's a movement for people to take care of themselves. We are in a society where often we are told that our work and home life need to be elevated at the expense of our own care. And so a movement towards self-care is saying, let's center ourselves. I think of the line from the Madonna song that I grew up listening to, until I learned to love myself, I was never loving anybody else, which I put up on my wall when I was in high school. But so the idea was like, you don't have to live into this hyper productivity. There's a different way to engage with the world. So there are definitely some benefits to how we think about self-care, and then some drawbacks. So who has access to it? So who gets to engage in self-care and who doesn't? How does it feel to be told to engage in self-care when you don't necessarily have the benefits and everything that you need to do those things, whether it's time, energy, resources, financial resources. And then going back to Megan Betz's first comment, the blame and shame when our burnout impacts others, or when we feel like we can't engage in care in the way that we're being told to. So it was interesting doing some, I recently got a master's degree in public health. And so of course I had to like go and look at all the scholarly information I could find. And it was interesting, a lot of the science around self-care is based on building resiliency, and it comes from often fields like nurses, teachers, healthcare professionals, therapists, and it talks a lot about drawing a line between what it means to care for ourselves and to care for others, and the tension there, and what happens when we're caring so much for others that we're not caring for ourselves. And so really the strategies that are offered are psychoeducational interventions, which is like a fancy way of saying like self-knowledge to help us learn coping strategies, and then stress reduction, you know, and prevention of burnout. So like making time for exercise and healthy foods and things like that. So yeah, I think the place I want to end here is that we have some helpful aspects to how we think about self-care, and then others that don't completely align with what is possible for our wider populations. So next, I'm going to take us into collective care. So I'm wondering if there's anybody in the Zoom room today who has attended a session with a focus on collective or community care. So a couple. Yeah, Marley, Tara. Okay. Yeah, so this was a newer concept for me. I think really around the pandemic when it first started in 2020, and we were talking a lot about mutual aid, was when I started really thinking about what collective care meant. So I'd love to hear from you again, either in the chat or aloud. What comes up for you when you think of collective care? Yeah, so mutual aid, sharing of responsibilities, support.
So what I think about is sort of the shift from, you know, hearing people have told others, you know, that you can't, how can anybody love you if you don't love yourself? Like that kind of a message. And it's always rubbed me a lot wrong, because I feel like you have to love others if they're not loving themselves, love them until they can love themselves. And so it's taking care of people who aren't able to do that.
Thank you. And Katie, I didn't realize that was you. It is lovely to see you.
Hey, Stephanie.
So I see from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. Kate, oh wow, I want to put that up. Mutuality, caring for one another, because we do, and also because offering that care supports our thriving, finding support, offering support within a community, from the individual to the group as a whole. Mutuality again, thinking about ways to care for each other. Ooh, circular and not transactional. Ooh, loving these notes. So I once again engaged in, and I love that Megan Benetti and Tara and Colleen are in the room when I get to talk about my fun ways of collecting data. So I did the same thing with collective care, and looked at what came up first. And these are the images that I got for collective care. So I wondered if folks again would be willing to either unmute or write in the chat Like, what are your impressions when you see the first images that come up regarding collective care?
The pictures look a lot to me like you're actually meeting real needs. Like I need food more than I need a facial or, you know, a bubble bath.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm seeing too, people supporting each other, some diversity here. We don't just have white women. Active.
Cesar Chavez.
What did you say? Kamala, I think it's Kamala.
Of Che Guevara and Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, Che Guevara, Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
So active, collective, care can intimidate because you have to be up and ready and proactive and extroverted. Oh, thanks for bringing that into the space, Libby. And then collective, people focus, not stuff. Yeah, so more around actions that people are taking together, rather than purchasing goods. Yeah, any other thoughts on my fun data collection of collective care images? Love, joy, and caring. Awesome.
It feels like to me, I'm just looking at the line of folks that like, I can receive support because I know that the person supporting me is receiving support. And I can give support because I'm receiving support. And so it feels like linked and woven rather than just isolation.
Yeah, and then Megan, the physical touch, I think that, yeah, that always strikes me. Yeah, and I think the masks too. Thinking about probably the timing that you know, some of this was done, different ways of like both protection, but also our need for touch as humans, and the role of touch and care, which is complicated from person to person. And then interracial. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and connection to the community. So we're moving from just like, you know, connecting on a beach by ourselves to what does it mean to connect with a wider community and have a community to connect with. So this is the part where we'll talk a little bit about the social ecology of care. So this one, I had a lot of fun really thinking through this. So if we were thinking about care, both self and collective care, which arguably, depending on how we talk about them, there's going to be overlaps there. Some would say no self-care is possible without collective and community efforts underlying them. So we'll start with, and if you're interested in learning more about the social ecological model, you can find it on the CDC's violence prevention website. But there's also a lot of cool social ecological models around all different kinds of public health conditions and just ways of thinking about it. So we start with that first circle, and when I think of the social ecological model, it's like I kind of think of myself. So it's my genetics, it's my attitudes, my behaviors, those things that are coming straight from Solomon. And that is where things like meditation, exercise, you know, coping strategies happen. But I think that when we think about those, what allows us to exercise? So where does that go? So I know my body can physically exercise, but I might need a walking path, which then moves me up to an institutional level. I might need fresh fruits and vegetables, and that takes me to all different kinds of levels, from maybe the hub. We have people from the hub here today, to the grocery store, to a market, to a garden. So all of those inputs feed into where care sits on the individual level. Then on the interpersonal level, and I was thinking about in public health, one of the theories that really focuses around the interpersonal level is social support theory. So this is, you know, when I'm having a hard time making a decision about an event, and I call Tara, I text Tara, and I say, do you have 10 minutes to talk through this one issue that I'm having? And then Tara helps me troubleshoot it. So social support theory is having those people to reach out for the interpersonal care that we need. I'm giving a friend a ride to a medical procedure on Friday, and I had a friend take me to one a few months ago. I've had people drop food off for me when I've needed it. I've dropped food off for other folks, although I'm not as good at it as some people in this Zoom room. I think it's a really beautiful thing when someone can make food and deliver it well. I just want to throw that out there. But then also mutual aid efforts, so direct cash support. So we saw that happen in Bloomington. I know it was happening across the country, but I was sitting here in Bloomington where we had these networks where someone needed a night in a hotel. And so you could directly just pay that hotel, give them the name. That's another form of kind of both community level to make it happen, but then it's, you know, between those two people. So that cycle, that circle is a little bigger. And then what's required for that? So we have to think again up the social ecology in terms of meeting those interpersonal care needs. And then on the institutional or community level, and this one is still where I think about things like support, social support theory, and then also social support networks, which I think mutual aid is those social support networks where you have a community of people. So it might be that Megan Betts is not available, but Katie Hopkins is. And then Katie calls Kamala and they come together to meet a need. And so that's what those networks are. So that's community, and then institutional. So this is what is the care that's happening in our organizations, in our local government, in all of these systems that are determining our day-to-day lives. So then moving up to the systemic or societal level, these are, again, thinking of systems, so policies. From seeing Katie makes me think of healthcare, and just, you know, like, how are we accessing healthcare? I've recently learned, I've learned so much about healthcare in the last few years, but one of them just about the rates in Indiana. So even regardless of how great your insurance coverage is, you're still paying more for the same procedure than you might be in another state, which was something I hadn't really understood. But anyway, so all of these are affecting us, whether it's the policies set by state or federal government entities. And then the other parts like norms. So what are our social norms? What are our narratives? And that's where that idea of self-care comes in. So we heard some really beautiful things. Exercising, you know, eating well, taking care of ourselves. Those are definitely positive things that we all want to have access to. But some of the norms and narratives about them allow parts of our population to have access to that care and parts of our population not to. And so it's also looking at that level of what are those basic needs that are being met or not. Where is there room to move beyond basic needs to different levels of care? And then who's included? So that level of systemic equity and inclusion on a population level, who is getting needs met and who isn't getting needs met. So I know we're getting a little bit low on time. What I was hoping we could do is consider some strategies that could increase collective care for staff, families, and young people. And it could be in our community, it could be in organizations, but making sure that we leave the room thinking about what kind of collective care can we create within our organizations. I think that's BTCC's thing, is like organizational community level. What are those things that we could do that would then enable that self-care to happen within these collective networks? So I'll leave a little space for ideas to come up, and then I'll go into what I found. So understanding parts of each other's identities. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, so often we try to meet a need, but we don't ask the person who has the need what they need, which can really be a problem. So we want to make sure, if we're trying to meet a need, that we are clear about what that need is. Modeling mutual care, so normalizing having needs to deter the stigma around help seeking. That one is huge. Yeah, that thing of pretending we're great and stable all the time can do damage on a population level. Increased staffing. Thank you for saying that, Kate. I think, you know, when you know there's someone to fill in for you, you're much more likely to take a sick day or do the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. And which, when you think of that on the level of an institution, of an organization, that's helping everyone. So it's both giving you what you need while helping the wider organization. So supporting people and setting boundaries and respecting them. Yeah, and the huge one. Mechanisms for ongoing feedback, sharing, conversation. So it's practiced when we aren't in crisis and we're ready to use it when we need support. Megan, that one, ooh, yeah. Shifting perspective, that it's not just about helping, it's about participating in the collective. Yes, yeah, so it's not this linear, you know, Toya gives something to Tracy. It's, you know, we are supporting one another. And then realistic organizational goal setting, increased accessibility to free leisure spaces. I think about that all the time, like how important having walking paths and parks and places to hike. I take that for granted living in Monroe County sometimes, that not everywhere you live has accessible places for walking and hiking. Identifying each other's skill sets and having honest and safe conversations about what is hard for individuals in an organization. Yeah, I mean, that gets us into power dynamics too. Like, how do we set the tone where it is safe for us to talk about what's working and where we feel cared for and where we don't. So then organizations viewing people as people first and employees second, having flexible and supportive policies that are determined by what employees say they need. Yes, Megan, I would like you to write the policies for all organizations. I'm going to be quiet for a second, just in case anyone wants to speak anything aloud. I can get excited and then not leave space for that. So any other strategies, collective care strategies that folks want to lift up? Oh, adding collective care line items to our organizational budgets. Yeah, and then Tara, yours about looking at organizations' norms. I like the idea of accessibility and inclusion audits and really looking at what's working, what's not working. Transparency as a form of education. Whew. Lots of you have written things down that I want to put like on my office wall. Okay, anything else? All right. So I had the great privilege of going through a collective care training with Sky Cantola, who works with Indiana Disability Justice, who came to one of the coalition's prevention community of practices. And I really liked some of the values that they had underneath the collective care strategies. So really thinking about intentionality and action, being modeling based on practices of sustainability and balance, preventing harm by addressing various communal and societal risk factors, being survivor-centered. And I think, you know, we use the word survivor in the domestic violence world a lot, but thinking about survivors as those most impacted by a condition as being at the forefront of determining action steps. And so really thinking about our collective care strategies through the lens of those most impacted. And then having Robin Donaldson in the room, I want to lift up trauma informed. So understanding the impacts of trauma on our brains and bodies and how we can be thinking about that and as organizations. And then a focus on basic material and emotional needs. So these are wants, desires, dreams. Our dreams get to fit into our care, even in our professional worlds. Can you imagine? And then building connection in all living beings. So getting to think about our impact on the earth, our interactions with animals and plants, and then mutual aid. So that's where that money, time, emotional labor comes in. So to, you know, kind of put that into buckets that everyone can take with them. On the organizational level, thinking about policy and practice, which I'm really loving that budget line item for collective care that Colleen brought up. And then trauma awareness, and then those stable basics. And that comes a lot from the language that we use at the coalition, which is access to resources. So our basic needs are met. Housing, food, space, clean water, and then social support. So that's where the boundaries that Katie brought up come in, the nothing about us without us, being survivor-centered, and having a safe and supportive community. So we're nearing the end of our time, and I would love to spend the rest of our time thinking about where do we go from here? So how can we disrupt the narratives about self-care that make it accessible to some and not to others? And where can we uplift these actions of collective care that can allow for us also to engage in the self-care practices that we and the people in our communities need? So I'd love to open it up. I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing so we can all see each other. And I'd love for people to go ahead and unmute and just hear what's sticking with you. Especially if you have an action to share.
I think sometimes in order to want to care for each other, it's easier if we know each other instead of caring for an anonymous person. So setting up our workspaces so that folks have the chance and time to interact. So whether that's setting up your cubicles so that you have common spaces or that you pass by each other's. Some of you may have seen the studies that show that large buildings that have a central stairway and the elevator is tucked farther behind get to know each other more. So sometimes it's the structural formation that can influence whether we know each other and then whether we're willing to care for each other.
Yeah, safe, stable, nurturing environments. It's another one of those public health concepts.
One of the things that I saw in there was talking about modeling community care and self-care. So especially if you have people that you are supervising or helping to manage, making sure that they see you asking for help and see you asking for feedback and things like that, because that's how it's perpetuated.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So think even just the models of managing, I think are really important to interrogate. Like how is power moving, and how are we using, power with each other, and where is power over getting in the way of our care? Thank you, Kate. Yeah, and I see Colleen's chat really exploring the budget idea, and we are asked to invest some of our salary back into our organizations, which is great because usually we choose organizations we love. But what if we designated some of that for staff mutual aid? I love that. Because we have differential financial situations. And so sometimes being asked to reinvest is a big ask. And how are we using that money? Any last ones or just thoughts that have come up? Katie, yeah.
Yeah, I think, again, those relationships are really important because we can share with each other what we are doing within our workplaces. I think sometimes it feels scary to do that in a group because you're like, okay, but what if they take it away? Or, like I know for myself, like I will share that we have a mental health hour a week that I get to count for doing something that is self-care for myself. And it is, every week we check in to make sure that each other are taking our hour. It can be a walk. It can be my therapist's appointment. It can be whatever it needs to be that is taking care of myself. And then I have to report out on that. But I think, just us talking to each other and having relationships where we trust and can share that, and then can, go back to our workplaces and ask for those things is important.
Thank you for that, Katie. Yeah, and again, that's about the climate again of the environment. So do we have that safe, stable, nurturing environment? And I want to lift up what Kate wrote, that the ask of reinvestment is harmful. So I wish we could have a whole hour of discussion around what reinvestment means, and how we all feel about that. All right. Well, I want to thank all of you. It was lovely. So many folks that I haven't seen for a while. I really hope that we get to partner. I'm going to share my email in the chat, and I'll actually be presenting again with Colleen Yackel on the E4 framework, so strategy selection, which is one of my favorite topics, and I will look forward to seeing hopefully some or most of you there. And again, thank you so much. This was that chat. I hope it is saved. I want to keep it forever.
Thank you, Solomon. You're referring to presenting tomorrow at day 2, and many of you have decided to join us for that. If you hadn't previously decided and want to, there is space, so feel free to check that out on the website or email the Btcc email. So thank you, Solomon, for this. You generated such a rich conversation. And I know many of us will carry this forward as we think through the day. We have more sessions continuing. So the way you got here is how you can get to your next session. You can go back to the Btcc website and click the link that sends you wherever you'd like to go next. And I'll remind that we do have a session at the end where folks can kind of connect the dots at 2 to 2:30. So if you would like to evaluate this session and give any feedback while it's fresh on your mind, feel free to click that link that's in the chat. Otherwise, it'll be on our website at the end as well. So thank you for sharing your time and yourself with us. And I hope to see you a little later today or some other time. Bye, everybody.